Most important of all is the education of girl children, for these girls will one day become mothers, and the mother is the first teacher of the child. In whatever way she reareth the child, so will the child become, and the results of that first training will remain the individual throughout his entire life. It is therefore clear that the education of girls is of far greater consequence than that of boys. This fact is extremely important, and the matter must be seen to with the greatest energy and dedication. Abdul Baha.
My topic today is the role of parents, especially mothers, in creating a new world civilization. Do not underestimate the significance of this topic. This may be the most significant topic in changing the world. Before we know the role of mothers, we should know human beings. This is absolutely essential. Who are we? Without knowing who we are, we cannot appreciate the role of motherhood. God created two worlds. One world is visible, the other world is invisible. The visible world we see with our own eyes. The invisible world we can see only with our inner sight. God is the light of the world. Without his light, everything is in darkness. Let's go back and see this idea of light. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. Baha'u'llah, really, the meaning of Baha'u'llah is light of God. Although in translation we say glory of God, but equally significant is the meaning love of God. And Baha'u'llah repeatedly refers to himself as the sun, Shams in Arabic. So without insight, we will not see that invisible world. One example is this. God created us the best that he could create, like himself. We can compare ourselves to diamond. Without that alignment, how can we recognize, without the light, how can we recognize diamond? No difference between diamond and a piece of broken glass. So let's see what this light teaches us. The first, it teaches us, in essence, we are a spiritual being, not physical being. We look at each other, we look at ourselves, and all we see is visible. But we truly are invisible. We don't see a person. We just see his body. This visual, this knowledge, this insight changes everything in our lives. For instance, our body is a clothes we wear, and we are the one who's wearing the clothes. Imagine if you want to change your life, you change your clothes. Does it make any difference? People keep changing their clothes. In other words, they go on vacation, they buy jewelries, and buy a new house, a new car, but nothing changes because they change their clothes. The person inside is untouched. Another example is we are living in a house. We are occupant of the house. But what we don't realize is we take the house for the occupant of the house. We keep changing our house while the person living in the house is sick. We just keep changing the house. It will not make any difference. This view that we are a spiritual being changes everything in our lives. It takes us from earth to heaven. We are a chicken searching for seeds, all of a sudden become eagles, soaring in heavens. The second birth Jesus often talked about is this birth from the physical world into a spiritual world. We become a new race of human beings. Baha'u'llah refers to himself coming to create a new race of human beings, very different from what we see. So what is the most significant knowledge that we can learn Baha'u'llah repeatedly says, the most significant knowledge is the knowledge of God, exalted be his glory. This knowledge teaches us to understand the secrets of creation, why everything is as it is. All our questions disappear. We see absolute perfection in everything we see. Now, this idea that everything, our spiritual world invisible to us is not new. It's also found in the writings of Jesus. Christ said, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. What does it mean? The first thing we need to do is to recognize that a spiritual kingdom, to enter that kingdom, to live in that kingdom, and everything else will be added to us. Everything else will be taken care of itself. And yet people today leave that kingdom. They either ignore it, or the last thing they want to learn about learning that spiritual kingdom. Let's see what that kingdom teaches us. The lesson that we can learn when we enter that kingdom. The first lesson that we learn is that this life is 1 second in eternity. Baha'u'llah says our life in this world is less than twinkling of an eye. So that alone, imagine the change that this alone can bring to our lives. The second lesson that we learn in this spiritual kingdom is that our eternity depends on this 1 second. Again, imagine the powerful message in this fact that we are shaping our eternity in this 1 second. Therefore, we are motivated to be the best we can be. Nothing can motivate us as much as this understanding. Not only this knowledge connects us to eternity, but it also affects us, connects us to all human beings, to all universe. We know we live in one planet, we are one people, we have one common destiny, and we are bound on one hand to eternity, on the other hand to the entire world. What a difference this will make. The third change that entering into that spiritual kingdom makes is that our sense of values change. We find our value in our soul, not in our savings. Just imagine how many people wish to be wealthy. They spend their whole life in search of wealth without knowing that the real wealth is within themselves, within their soul. They can become the richest person, as even richer than Bill Gates, by taking advantage of the treasures that God put in their soul. Baha'u'llah says that people are proud because the jewelries they wear and they own. And he says, what should be proud is the earth that gives us that jewelry. You see, they belong to the earth, not to us. We leave them all behind. The fourth change that this brings about in our lives is, what is the secret of happiness? People search for happiness in everything where it cannot be found. They search for material things, for all kinds of pleasures, physical pleasures, without knowing that they can have greatest joy and peace and happiness by entering into that spiritual world. The example I like to give you is, imagine if you lived in a mansion, a most beautiful mansion, but it was in total darkness. Would you enjoy that mansion? The light of God is that like the light of the sun, that makes that mansion. We can see the beauty of that mansion. Without his light, nothing really is beautiful. So let's get to the next topic. We're talking about knowing human before we know the role of women, and we're going step by step. Without this knowledge, we cannot appreciate the role of mothers, especially. So what are the signs? You say, you ask people, you talk to people, to Christians, to Muslims, everybody, to atheists. They say, I'm doing fine. They're pleased with themselves. In the Old Testament says, everyone look clean in his own eyes. In the Quran says, every group is pleased with his own beliefs. So there must be some ways we can know if we have entered into that kingdom. Self-deception is very common. We can all deceive ourselves by pretending, believing that we are the true Christians or true Baha'is, true Muslims. So let's see what are the signs. I will give you a list of the signs that you live in that kingdom, you have entered that kingdom or not, all of us. The first signs of knowing that you are in kingdom is that you feel God's presence every second of your life. You recognize that every deed is recorded. Baha'u'llah says every deed, however insignificant, is preserved. So Jesus gave the example of if you give a glass of water, you will be rewarded. Just simple act like that. In the Quran says, if someone greets you, greet him more warmly, even the way you greet it. And then it says God takes everything into account. Even the way you greet a stranger or a friend works in your favor or against you. So always greet people with joy and smile as if you invite them. This knowledge motivates us to seek to engage in good deeds every moment of our lives. We will not miss a second to do something good for our neighbors. I didn't want to give this example, but I will tell you this example. I was walking a couple of years ago in my neighborhood, and I saw the garbage can had fallen from my neighbor, and the content of this garbage can spread all over on the ground. So I said, the garbage man is not going to collect that garbage. He's going to leave it behind and go. I decided to do a good deed. I went back to my home and took a shovel and took all that garbage back into the can and put it in place. So this was an act that I felt it was, however insignificant at that moment, I felt it was something I could do, and I would regret not doing it. Baha'u'llah says, if we knew the consequence of every negative behavior, every bad deed, we would never engage in anything unseemly. Imagine. The reason we engage in unseemly behavior is we do not know the consequences. Those consequences are going to, we're going to face them for all eternity. The third change that entering this kingdom brings into our life is love for knowledge. The light of God that shows us, helps us see that invisible world is expressed through knowledge. Only through knowledge of God, learning about God, can we truly, without knowledge, we can truly know God. We can live in that light. What does knowledge lead us to? We're told repeatedly that the knowledge of God leads us to love of God. God is absolute perfection. If we discover that our beloved is absolute perfection, surely we will fall in love with him. Our beloved is God himself. And then once we love God, since everything is part of creation, we begin to love everything that is in existence. Even the enemies, the evil people, we begin to love them. They're part of creation. So we expand love of God to all people. This is the reason Jesus said the greatest commandment is love of God and love of people. So that's it all begins. It is absolutely essential to spread the knowledge of God to all people. This will give us motivation to spread this light. And at this moment, we're doing exactly this. You're searching for the knowledge of God, to know God and love God, and spread this knowledge. And Zoom has become an instrument of this. This sixth change that entering into the kingdom of heaven brings into our lives is our attitude towards suffering. Imagine how much suffering there is in the world. This level of suffering is 1,000 times more than God intended. God loves us to live in peace and joy. And all this suffering is because we fail to live in that light, to seek knowledge. This knowledge will help us become strong 100 times, 1,000 times stronger at facing adversity. They will not bring us down. We will face them with great courage. Let me give you an example of how the knowledge of God can give us strength against adversity. When I was in Florida, I spoke, this was maybe 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, a long time ago. I spoke before an audience, and after the meeting, this was in Clearwater, Florida, a lady came to me. She was about 4 years old, and she said something about her difficult life. There wasn't any time for me to talk with her about the details, but I made a suggestion to her. I said, why don't you go and read the Tablet of Patience, Louis Sapp, the Tablet of Patience that was revealed to comfort or honor the people who became martyrs in the city of Neiris. It's a long tablet, and Baha'u'llah explains the secret of suffering. So I left that city and then came back a year later to the same city and gave talk in the same hall. And this lady came to me and said, thank you for telling me about this epistle, this tablet of Baha'u'llah about suffering. I am now praying for more suffering. Can you imagine this? She said this reading, this knowledge gave her the strength to pray for more suffering. I told her, you're ahead of me. I am lucky if I can even endure and accept my level of suffering, and you're praying for more. This is amazing. The seventh change that brings in our lives this understanding, entering this heavenly kingdom, is that we do not see anyone as enemy. Abdul Baha says many times, don't see anyone as your enemy. Don't even call him an enemy, because your enemies are the greatest help in lifting your soul. Through them, you can show courage, patience, trust. Therefore, be thankful to all your enemies, the people who dislike you, who mistreat you, who anyway annoy you. They are giving you a chance to grow through them. So love them with all your heart and soul. Consider them as a ladder to which you can rise higher and higher. You can use your ladder to go down. You can use ladder to go up. The eighth consequence is birth from the physical world into a spiritual world. You become a new person. You're not the person you were before. You're completely a new individual. New birth from the womb of mother is the first birth, and the second birth from the womb of the earth, physical world, into the spiritual world. Without the light of God, the diamond of our spirit gets lost in darkness. Let's get closer now to the role of motherhood. The next stage is, the next topic is the role of education. Christ said, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in the field. Just as a treasure is hidden, the spiritual kingdom is also hidden, like a treasure. You must search for it. You must dig it out. It does not come to you on its own. So we are also part of that kingdom. All our talents are hidden. Without education, none of them will appear. That's the only way. The example of this, another example is like we are like a seed. Look at the seed of the most beautiful flower, the luscious, the sweetest fruit. You don't see anything in that seed, but plant it, and lo and behold, the beauty and the sweetness. That's the example of what we are. I studied psychology and taught psychology for 30 years, and one figure in psychology who stands out, and I'm sure you heard of him, you took any course in psychology, was Abraham Maslow. He was most interested in studying the life of most self-actualized individuals, the people who have developed their potential more than anyone else. And they, according to his standard, he found only 1% of people who developed fully their potentials. And if we take, he did not take the spiritual potential. If we take that potential into account, I would say the number goes down to 1 in 1,000. So to know human beings, we need to know the capacities, the potentials that we have, and we need to cultivate. The first thing that when we enter the kingdom of heaven, the first lesson we learn is this, that our bodies is the temple of God. It is sacred. We cannot show disrespect to that temple. Many people abuse their body through drugs and alcohol and smoking and junk food, and people are sicker than ever before. I know I can give you the statistic. We're working so hard to reduce cancer, yet cancer is rising. In the last 20 years, it has been increasing, and many other diseases. People do not respect their body. God, our Creator teaches us that this body is my creation. It is sacred. Take care of it. And if you're sick, in the scriptures of mankind, we read that there are two knowledges. One is the knowledge of the body. One is the knowledge of religion. But the knowledge of body comes first. This is our Creator teaches us. Because how could you seek knowledge? How could you love God in a sick body? So the first requirement is to keep their body as healthy as it can be. The second lesson we learn in the second potential we have is our moral values. Moral values, what makes us human. If we are not practicing honesty, which Abdul Baha says the foundation of all virtues, we are not humans. Anyone who is dishonest is not human. That's simple. That's the foundation of being human. The third potential is social. The social potential teaches us that first we can communicate we learn to communicate with each other and love all people. The racial prejudice today is a major problem in this country. and it teaches us to associate with all nations and races. Baha'u'llah asks us to associate with all people. The fourth potential is education. The Bahá'í Faith education is extremely emphasized, schooling. The fifth potential, which you may not have been heard of, is the cultivation of the brain. The brain is the most sophisticated, the most advanced creation in the universe. But basically, there are two potentials in the brain. One is psychologists called one is called critical mind. The other one is called creativity. We need to learn to look at everything with critical mind. Do not be gullible. We hear so much advertisement on television, we believe them. So many people tell me something, I say, what is the evidence? How could you believe this? The second one is creativity, where we can find many solutions for every problem. This is the part of education and of course parents, both of them. The sixth potential is the spiritual potential, which we have talked about it a little bit. Now let's go get closer to the role of motherhood. We learned human beings from God's perspective. We learn about those six potentials. Now let's see what is the role of mother in cultivating those potentials. Without knowing who we are, we cannot appreciate the role of mothers. Now let's look specifically at Baha'i teachings about motherhood. What are the teachings? What can we learn about being a mother? The first lesson, the first teaching is that childhood is the most significant period in our lives. Every year is more significant than the next year. So third year is more significant than second year. Second year is more important than third year more important than fourth year. So as we grow, we become less flexible. We must recognize the power of childhood and the power of mother in cultivating this tender branch. Abdul Baha compares a child to a tender branch. We must make the biggest, we can make the biggest differences in early years. The second lesson that Baha'i Faith teaches, and the quotation was read earlier about this, mothers are the first and foremost educator of the child. I think this is revolutionary. This is a new idea. You do not hear this. I have not seen it written in any psychology books. Only in the Baha'i Faith, you can find the role of mother. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later, how significant this role is that is bestowed on mother to be the first and foremost. In fact, the destiny of every child is in the hand of the mother, not the father. The third teaching in the Baha'i Faith that relates to motherhood and to women is that education of daughters is preferable to education of sons. This is also revolutionary. In the past ages, always men have received preference for education. Now a religion comes and says exactly the opposite of what we have believed and practiced. The fourth teaching in the Baha'i Faith is a spiritual education and moral education of children is more significant than their schooling. This is also new. I do not see anywhere any sign of this. Abdul Baha says, which would you prefer? A child who is educated but maladjusted, miserable, or a child who is uneducated but happy, adjusted, living in peace? The answer is obvious. The fifth lesson that the Baha'i Faith teaches us is that physical punishment is forbidden. We still live in this age where people think that this is the way to educate a child. Physical punishment of any kind is violence. Not only you teach violence to your child, you also teach him not to respect you and not to bind with you. This destroys the relationship. You cannot find happily well-adjusted children in a home where they have been punished. So let's go one step further and see what kind of a home can bring the best adjusted children. According to studies, once again, Maslow, the first psychological need we have is security. That's the first. So your home, when we raise the children, should be a peaceful environment, as peaceful, calm as possible. I read somewhere that today, a child's home is the most dangerous place. No place children are harmed, violated as much as in their homes by their parents. The second principle we must practice in order to raise a new generation, a spiritual generation, is that there should be absolute unity between parents. This brings also the role of fathers. In the Baha'i writings, we read that a couple should live as one soul in two bodies. You would not argue with yourself, would you? As we never do that. We accept our views. Yet, we find that our homes are not a place of unity. Imagine this, look at the statistics. We have 50% of marriages lead to divorce. Obviously, there was no sign of unity in those marriages. What about the other 40? According to some authorities, among the other 40, the other 50, at least 40 of them do not provide the ideal standards for their children. There are differences, argument, disunity. So we may have only 10% of homes in which there is unity. No wonder we have so much problem in the world. When you argue any kind of a disagreement, an argument with your spouse is a remedy for disaster. When the child sees that you're not in unity, he loses or she loses his respect for you and his trust. How could you raise children who do not respect you and do not trust you? They say, they don't know what they're doing. How can I follow them? How can I trust them? So they search for other heroes outside home. So this is extremely essential, never to argue, show disagreement in front of our children. If you have disagreement, it must be done peacefully outside where the children are. We need to respect children. Any sign of disrespect to children will disrupt this process. The third lesson, the third requirements for raising a happy family, happy children, is to pray. Prayer is talking with our beloved, with our Creator. Children should see you pray emotionally, with all your heart and soul, not just verbally, but it should come from all your heart and soul. They should see your expression love for your Creator. This creates, feelings are contagious, so they learn that feeling early in childhood, and therefore they can practice it when they grow up. The fourth requirement for a happy family is to love all children. Today, people do everything for their children. Every toy, every car, everything expensive, but disregard the children of the world. Seeing you love all children will not make them jealous. They will just learn the universal meaning of love. They will begin to also love other people. The fifth requirement for a happy childhood, happy family, is that you must use the least amount of control over your children and give them the greatest freedom. Control destroys their initiative. We find many parents who think that they must control their kids. And the happiest children grow in an environment where there is little control, and this extreme control prevents their brain from growing. Many people have brain problems, and you cannot change them because their excessive control stifles the growth of the brain. Let me give you a simple example about freedom. I walk every day in my neighborhood twice a day to stay healthy. You may know my age, I said 87, and I still work hard to protect my body, respect my body, the temple of God. One day I was walking along the road and I saw a little girl about 8 years old bending on the pavement and moving her hand somehow on back and forth. I got curious and tried to find out what is this girl doing. I got closer to her and said, "What are you doing?" She says, "I'm trying to save ants. There were some ants in water, drowning, not being able to move out. And this little girl was doing her best to save the lives of these ants." I said, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" She said, "I'm a vegetarian." I said, "You're 8 years old?" She told me that she was 8. I said, "You're 8 years old and you're vegetarian?" She said, "I have been vegetarian since I was 6. I was amazed. I said, "Your name should be in the book of world records. How could I said, did your parents allow you to be vegetarian?" She said, "Yes, they have no problem." So while I was talking with her, her mother became curious. Who is this stranger talking to my little daughter? So she came forward, and sure enough, she confirmed. She said, "Yes, our daughter is vegetarian. We respect her view and support her." This was incredible example of parents giving their children the freedom to become vegetarian at age 6. The other requirement for healthy families is spoiling children. When you do too much, in thinking that you love your babies, you must do as much as possible for him or for her. You are disrupting the initiative, creativity, and growth of that child, the growth of his brain. You stifle the growth of his brain. Spoiling is as bad as controlling. Both of them have negative consequences. If you feel that you need to control your child or punish your child, you're doing something wrong. It is not your child who is at fault. You are at fault. You must reevaluate your relationship with your spouse and with your children. The 8th requirement for raising a family, ideal and happy family, is to respect and appreciate your spouse in front of your children. Many people take for granted each other. Expression of appreciation, continuous appreciation, creates in the mind of a child that my parents are truly one. They are united. Don't hesitate and don't ever stop appreciating each other. The ninth lesson that we need to learn, psychologists talk about this, is identification. I don't know if you took any course in psychology. It's called identification. That really relates to everything we say. Who are the people we copy? We copy the people we admire. Look at young people who want to copy an athlete or a movie star. We always want to be like the person we admire. So if you want your children to be like you, to copy you, they must admire you. That's the only way you can control them, not by force, not by punishment, only through process of identification. If they do not identify with you, they will search for other heroes. The 10th requirements of a happy family is to show love for knowledge. Sit together, all of you, read books together, the books that pertain especially to knowledge of God and to history. This, you set an example that knowledge is the light, as I said before. The light of God is the knowledge of God. We cannot know God without that knowledge, so we live in darkness. Read together, especially the stories of sacrifice of true believers. When I was about 12 years old, 10 years old, my brother, who was 10 years older, he would read from the Dawnbreakers. Some of you who may not know about this, Dawnbreakers is the most astonishing history of courage on the part of people who had no fear. They made the greatest sacrifice. They were true heroes. They gave their lives without fear for the cause they believed. So I encourage all of you to read this book with your children and read it for yourself, of course, and for with your children to see the potential of human beings. They show, these heroes show the highest potential of being human, giving their lives for their beliefs. So this is an amazing thing. You will not believe it. Because of listening to these stories, I was 10 years old, 12 years old. What do you think my daydreams were? My daydreams were to become a martyr like those heroes. They affected me so deeply that I wished to be a martyr at the age of 10, 12 years. This is the power of identification. I identified with those people and I wanted to be like them. The 9th lesson that we need to teach children is that race is irrelevant to who we are. Your body is a clothes you wear. You are hidden in your body. They need to appreciate people for their character, not for their cover, not for how they look. They see example in their classes, in their schools of discrimination. You need to work constantly against this. In the Baha'i writings, again, Abdullah always gives us example. We are like flowers. It would not be pleasant to go into a garden with the same color. We should appreciate various colors. And he also used the chocolate example of chocolate to help children appreciate the dark color. The 10th lesson and the final lesson that the principle that we need to observe in family and set an example is appreciate diversity of views. We are far behind in this respect. When someone expresses a different point of view, we tend to arise and try to prove him wrong. This is a tendency. The Quran says people love to argue. We all like it's like getting into a fight. You win or I win. We cannot both win. So show children that if they hear something different, appreciate it rather than feel threatened by it. Love people who have a different point of view. Abdul Baha uses the best example you can imagine. He says the light of truth can come from clashes of ideas, just like the two electrical charges create electricity. He says that it's in the light of various opposing views that the light of truth can become manifest. So if someone differs with you, appreciate him, love him. He is helping you to see the truth more clearly. These are the examples, these are the lessons. So what is the biggest problem in our age? The biggest problem in our age is failure to appreciate the potentials of women, the power that God has given them in transforming our planet. I think this is the greatest problem in the world. This is the root cause of all the problems. If we recognize the role and capacity of mothers in changing every human being in every home, that is the only way we can change this planet. Men should learn not to feel superior to women. They are not superior. In fact, this is my own belief. Women are more superior. They are gifted with many talents that men are deprived of those talents. And Abdul Baha repeatedly refers to the gifts that women have. He never speaks about men having any gifts. So men should abandon their feeling of superiority. And women should recognize their role and their significance in shaping a new world. They have not recognized this. They should be proud of being a woman. Women who give birth to a girl should be proud that they gave birth to a daughter and not to a boy, contrary to what we see. The secret of beauty, the greatest secret of beauty in this world is diversity. To change the difference between men and women, sure, they should have equal rights, but they have different roles. To change the roles of men and women is the greatest mistake we can make. And every law that Baha'u'llah has revealed focuses on this point, that men and women have different roles. They should recognize their roles, focus their roles, and function there, whatever they are best suited for. When we mix up these two roles, we create chaos. So what is the power of women? Why are they the most powerful gender in our world? They say, there is a poetry says about God. He said, you have the whole world in your hand. I would say that same about women. They have the whole world in their hand. What they do, they are co-creators with God. God created us physical beings. Women, mothers, have the responsibility creating us spiritual beings. This responsibility is given to women and not to men. Their function is to create a new race of man. This is what Baha'u'llah says, he's come to create a new race, and this new race lies in the hand of women. The key to every problem is in the hand of a mother who is given birth to a baby. In this capacity, this talent is theirs only. So to create a new civilization, a new world of peace, we have two civilizations, physical and spiritual. The spiritual civilization is in the hands of mothers, not fathers. Creating a spiritual civilization where people live in love and peace and unity, this responsibility is given primarily to women, not solely, but primarily. Creating a physical civilization is given primarily, not solely, to men. Which one is more important to you, do you think? I think the spiritual civilization is a million times more important than physical civilization. Look at this country in the United States and many other countries, advanced countries. They have wealth, but they are miserable. People have never been so sick physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually. All the statistics point to a decline of society. We are gaining wealth, we are having more billionaires, but many, even poverty is not solved. We have many poor people. But spiritually, people are getting sicker and sicker every day. Baha'u'llah predicted this. And Jesus also predicted, he said, when the Son of Man comes, will you find faith on earth? People have lost their faith, their spiritual life, that spiritual kingdom in which they must live. They are far away from that kingdom. So mothers have a greater role in creating a new world than fathers. I'm coming almost to the close. In the book of his laws, the most holy book, the soul of all the scriptures, Baha'u'llah emphasizes several virtues that are related to our topic, to parenting. I found 4 of them. One is gentleness. Gentleness between parents and their children. The best clothing, everything should be in good taste and set an example for them. And the 4th one is courtesy. Courtesy is a virtue that children especially relate to. So you must show courtesy in your home every chance you have. Be courteous. You can say respect your people. They won't know what respect means, but they can relate to courtesy because courtesy is respect made visible. Make sure that you show courtesy at every moment. These are the virtues that Baha'u'llah has taught us. And I say something, this is my own personal view, all the teaching, all the laws of Baha'u'llah focus on one principle: separation of roles of men and women. Unless we recognize the roles to be unique and complementary, we cannot create a civilization. And this is the biggest problem today in the world, mixing up of these roles. So we'll finish with this statement from Baha'u'llah, with a couple of ideas from Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah says, I have come to create a world in which if the most beautiful woman walks from the east to the west, no one will look at her with lust. He also says about creating a new world, that if a person walks over mountains, mines of gold and silver, will not pay any attention. This is the world he's creating. And it will take a long time. The prediction is made in the scriptures that it will take 300 years from the inception of the Bahá'í Faith for the world to recognize this faith, this great light of God. Baha'u'llah means light of God. We have about 130 more years before reaching that point, when in the period of about 9 years, people will turn to the Bahá'í Faith in numbers of millions. One day we may see 10 millions, 20 millions, 5 millions. Every day, the whole crumble of the old civilization will fall. And this is what he says, the back of the people, the world people will shake. This is not about war. Many people think there will be a war. But this is the crumbling of an old civilization. It will cause fear in those, especially who have power. Please share this knowledge with all young people who want to get married before they get into conflict. I have a section that I don't know how much time we have to cover. I have no understanding of time limits. I have about brain, the function of the brain that I may cover. Teach this information to every young couple so that they know in advance if they want to create a miserable family, a child who lives in misery for all eternity. Remember, as I said before, we carry our soul into the next kingdom. We will be the same person when we pass from this life. You are not going to be changed. You are the same person you were before. If you are miserable, you will remain miserable. If you're happy and peaceful, you will be happy and peaceful. So remember the consequence of raising a miserable child for all eternity and a happy, peaceful child for all eternity. Only God knows us, and only He can teach us the secrets of a happy life and a peaceful world. Thank you for listening. If there is time, I can cover other topics. Otherwise, I do not know what time it is. I'm open to questions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Motlagh, for your talk. I think everyone really enjoyed all of the points and information you brought up. It was really inspirational for me, at least. So yes, now we have time for questions. So if you have a question, you can put it in the chat and I will read it out loud.
So we have ample time for questioning. If I said anything that is unreasonable or impractical, I love to hear from you. I said one of the principles of that I taught is we should appreciate when people have different point of view, rather than see it as a threat. In Baha'u'llah, in one of his tablets, he gives us the meaning of freedom. I think every Baha'i should know that. He interprets the meaning of a word hikmat, which means wisdom. He says wisdom has been defined by many people in many ways. He gives a dozen meaning of this word, and he says all of them are acceptable because they do not conflict with the word of God. If you have any idea, any belief that does not contradict the word of God, because if we really believe Baha'u'llah spoke the word of God, we cannot contradict him. You're free to express, and no one has a right to criticize you. They should appreciate you. As I said, Abdul Baha said, the spark of truth comes from clashes of ideas. This is wonderful. If you have different point of view or any questions, anything unexplained, please ask. I'm ready to respond.
Our first question asks, how can a mother balance selflessness and serving her family while also caring for herself?
Okay. This is an excellent question. You know, we live in an age when many mothers feel that they don't have enough income, there is not enough income for the family. Therefore, they feel obligated to work. And maybe I know some cases, even the father pressures his wife to work and be a source of income. Now, this is the way it is today. And we cannot blame mothers for working, except that they should do everything possible to spend as much time with their children as possible and put working and income at the lower level of priority. In the future, Baha'i Faith will solve this problem. The resources we waste today for war and this fraud, you can not imagine. These resources will be used to help mothers to raise their children without a slightest concern about their needs, their financial needs. They should be provided all, as I said, the resources will be available. They should be provided with every need. In fact, the society should provide at least 3 psychologists who come to every home to observe the parents, to see how they treat their children. They should observe that home repeatedly and guide parents, because many people are not aware of their own weaknesses. I believe in the future, when the Baha'i Faith prevails, these services will be provided. But at the present, because of the pressures, difficulties, women have to work and they should not feel guilty, but do everything possible to minimize the separation from their children. Did I answer the question?
Yes, thank you so much. Our next question asks, what are the 4 characteristics found in the Akdas besides courtesy?
Could you repeat that again?
What are the 4 characteristics found in the Akdas besides courtesy?
Baha'u'llah does not specify courtesy, but he says courtesy is the father of all virtues. If you're not, courtesy is simple. If you're not able to say hello, to greet a person, to embrace someone you have not met a long time, to smile when you talk to someone, these are simple. Everyone is capable of doing this. If you're not courteous, that's a bad sign that nothing is beyond that. So the first sign of being human, is courtesy. When you don't show courtesy, it shows lack of love for people. You know, give you an example. I often walk in the street and greet people, and they know me. They had never seen anyone my age walking every day, twice a day. I'm the best known person in my neighborhood. I say hello, greet people, smile, talk to them often, give them my book to read. I give this book, A Spiritual Design of Creation, to many of my neighbors, because it's a book, it's not about the Baha'i Faith, it's about God. There was a man some time ago, he was a children's doctor, by the way. He would not respond to people's greetings. You would say hello to him, he'll just look at you. So one day, I have a neighbor, he's a lawyer, he was angry. He said, this guy never responds to my greeting. So I comforted him and told him maybe he has some problems, psychological problems. And sure enough, after a few years, he changed and started greet other people. I think the way we eat, the way we dress, the way we meet people, we know all the signs of courtesy. Go out of your way to show this virtue. It's very simple, and children can copy it very easily.
Thank you. Our next question asks, how can fathers also support a mother's role in educating children?
You see, parents are like 2 hands or 2 legs. You cannot walk with 1 leg. You cannot live comfortably with 1 hand. Parents should recognize that if they are not helping at least they should not hurt. If they are not setting a good example or they cannot change themselves, at least they should not give the mother a chance, full chance, 100% chance to raise the children. We find many marriages that are unfit, divorce rates testify to this. The best fathers can do is to stay out of the way, to let the mother and recognize that by creating conflict, they can win in the, as I said, the argument, but lose their children forever. If they recognize how they can impact the life of that child, I think they will make every effort to at least not cause any problem. That's all I can say to fathers. They should give the responsibility to mothers and stay out of the way.
Thank you. Our next question asks, can you clarify what you meant by not looking at race? I think that can be problematic when dealing with racism head on, because when people hide behind their color blindness to avoid dealing with white privilege. I think it is important to see people's differences, but to not treat them differently because of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. As I said, what we appear is not the question of race. Women appear different. Handicapped people look different. Short people look different. People who are extra weight, they look different. We should recognize the body for what it is. It is a clothes, it's not you, it is the clothes you're wearing. Is the cover on your on true self. So if children recognize, if people recognize this, they will never even feel that a black person is black. I read this story. A child in Africa saw for the first time a white person and asked his father or mother, why did this person color himself white? So for him, seeing black was the norm. The spiritual perspective eliminates racism. There is no way you can live in the spiritual life and show any distinction for blacks. In fact, in my class, which I taught for 30 years, I always favored the minorities and the blacks, always. The Indians, I had also had American Indian in my class. I showed a special favoritism because I knew they were disfavored in society. I went out of my way to be more favorable toward them than the majority. That's what the spiritual perspective does.
Thank you. Our next question asks, it's not always financial needs that would make a woman want to work. For example, if a woman has gone to school to become a physician, attorney, teacher, etc., she would want to use her education to serve humanity. How can one find that balance?
Okay, wonderful question. Two things attract people in this life more than anything. One is wealth, one is power and prestige. If you're a doctor, you have a sense of prestige. Not only you gain money, but you also feel that you have a great, people say, I married a doctor, as if being a doctor is superior race. These two attract people. Let me give you an example. If a doctor, a lady who became a doctor, a specialist, has given a choice, okay, I'm just giving a simple example, a choice between being the most successful doctor with the highest income and being the best mother for a child who lived forever in misery or happiness. In good conscience, which one would you choose? The prestigious job of being a doctor, or the honor, the great honor of being a person who gives every iota of her energies to create a child? He will be the best example in this happiest person in this life, in the next. Let me give you another example. Forget about the doctor. If a mother recognizes her role, the incredible role of motherhood, And she was given a choice between being a queen, being married to a king, or being a mother of a well-adjusted child. Any woman with a spiritual perspective would choose to be a mother to a child who will live in happily forever after than to be a queen. Because what's the being significance about being a queen? You have prestige for maybe 40 years, 50 years, 100 years. But then when you die, who are you? You're an ordinary human being. You're no better than any other human being who live in Africa or Amazon or Alaska. You're just your true self. You're not. The honor of being queen is completely gone. The honor of being a king is gone. Our honor is what we accomplish in this world, what we are and what we accomplish. So let that person who is a doctor evaluate her sense of values and make a choice between enjoying a profession, successful profession, or being a true mother with impact on eternity. Let her make a choice. I cannot be a judge. Every woman has a chance to make a choice.
Thank you. Our next question relates to the idea of being responsible for ourselves. Quote, each of us is responsible for one life only, and that is our own, from Shoghi Effendi. How might one best approach this responsibility when it comes to maintaining one's mental and physical health if one has experienced many adverse childhood experiences, and one is in the dark when it comes to knowing what path to take to change one's entrenched mental and habitual thought patterns and conceptions?
Okay, the question was long. I did not get all the details, but what I understood, maybe you could say it briefly. What I understood is that we have on the one hand choices that would determine our everlasting life and all the other nuisances, everything that disrupts our attention. My answer is this: we all live on a specific level of spirituality. When I speak about entering the kingdom of heaven, it doesn't mean that all of us on the same level. As we advance spiritually, then the problems become smaller and smaller. We become more powerful to deal with problems. This issue is relevant to our level of spiritual advancement. The more you advance, the happier you will be, because you see absolute perfection in God's creation, and adversity becomes a blessing. Baha'u'llah in the hidden words, he says, adversity is a blessing. This is contrary to everything we wish to have. We want to escape from adversity, yet God says is a blessing, because through that adversity, you manifest your true self. I think this is what I understood from the question. I hope I was right.
Our next question asks, don't you think that a woman would want to use her education when she spends like over $300,000 and many years of schooling? And shouldn't there be a balance?
Okay, she owes she owes 300,000 years, and now she faces a choice between raising a child and paying her debts. You see, the ideal and practical sometimes meet, and our sense of values come into the picture. I cannot in any way judge a woman who owes $300,000 and she wants to pay her debt. I cannot be a judge. She must be her own judge. Of course, consultation with her husband to meet the ideal with practical. Perhaps she can work part-time. As an example, you have to find a practical solution to every problem. Maybe she would work part-time to meet her debt. So there is never a black and white answer. We have to look at every life, every family, and solve that problem, that need according to that specific family. There is no universal answer to this question. I think every family, every lady should ponder about this. Maybe she could postpone her death for a few years, because the first 5 years of children's life are the most critical. And as I said, in the future, this will be taken care of. But for now, she must adapt and be creative, find a solution, a practical solution to this problem.
Our next question asks, to me, choosing between a career versus motherhood feels like a false dichotomy, and I think it's important to consider the role of the three protagonists of the community building process, in this case, raising children. That is, the individual, the community, and the institution, all of which play a role in raising children. What are your thoughts?
We do not live in an ideal world. Everything is the opposite of what should be. So under present condition, every decision we make is difficult. And this is what Baha'u'llah said, that every problem we face must be solved through consultation. He says, even you make trivial questions, you're thinking about trivial issues, you must consult. Use the mind of the wisest, most spiritual people. So the solution to these practical problem is consultation. Talk to a few people that you trust, who are most spiritually advanced, and see what solution do they offer. This is the practical life that we must face. As I said before, I know many women have difficulty leaving their job for which they have worked so hard. And as I said, no one can be a judge, but you must do your best to discover the best solution through consultation. Each case is unique. No two cases are exactly alike.
Thank you. Well, do we have any more questions? Well, if not, then I want to thank you again so much, Dr. Motlagh, for your talk and these follow-up questions. I think that everyone really enjoyed it, and the discussion afterwards added to all of our understandings, and it was invaluable discussion. So thank you so much.
I appreciate for your listening. It was a great honor to be present in so many lovers of knowledge. I encourage you to start a class studying the spiritual design of creation. It's about 300 pages. It explains everything as it is, so that you will fall in love with God more than anything else, more than love in your profession, your husband, your children. When you love God, you can expand that love to every human being, to every animal, like that little girl who was saving ants, protecting them from death. Thank you for listening. It's a great honor.
Thank you so much. So now I will introduce our speaker for next week. Our speaker next week will be Mr. Wade Franson, and his talk will be How Religion Was Hijacked on September 11th. And again, these talks occur every Saturday at noon Eastern Daylight Time, so please invite your friends and family. And if you're new to the Baha'i Faith, or if you'd like to be added to our mailing list, please fill out the Google form that we've put in the chat below. And now we're just going to close with a Baha'i prayer set to music.
Enable me to grow beneath the shadow of thy loving kindness. I am a tender plant. Cause me to be nurtured through the outpourings of the clouds of thy bounty. I am a sapling of the garden of love. Make me into a fruitful tree.
Thank you so much, everyone. Hope to see you all next Saturday. Bye.